So going back to this form here, that if you missed it, I did in video 18. And what I'm going to do now is hollow it out so it is a shape with an interior, or form with an interior, and so these will be walls with a thickness. And so going to edit in place, it'll take me back to the solid, and then you can see already if I go to select these things, the first one is the solid, and then I've taken the angle off the front using a void. So I'm going to select it, and just for the time being I'm going to uncut that so that they're separate things again, and that way you'll see the original form a bit more clearly. So uncut geometry, and then you can choose the things that are cut. So then back in the finished model, and sorry, I don't want to do that. So I just want to show it to you before I go out of it. So in the 3D view that I've got showing the interior, there we are. So you can see then the forms, and this one is simply an extrusion made from the side, but then the other is a tapering, basically a tapering triangle. So would you have an idea how to make a tapered shape like that? Blend, exactly. It's that simple. That's right, exactly, spot on. So instead of using extrusion, if you want to taper out, just make one shape for the top, one shape for the bottom. If I go to edit face, you can see the shape for the first triangle, edit top, and there's a different triangle for the top. So going to the ground floor. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I'm simply going to go to edit face again and develop up that form. Just with offset, I'll give it a thickness. I'm going to leave it at 300 actually, that's good. Choose these lines, and with split, I'll break the edge at the top so that I can then use trim to corner and join this to make a closed shape that has now a thickness, just like a wall. Edit top, split again, I'll do right away, and then with offset I'll bring these edges in, just the same as I did before, just freezing up. Trim and... Okay, so then if I finish that, I'll have a look, and you can see already it's looking more like a wall. In the 3D view, you can see the void, and if I go to finish the model now, it'll give me that warning again, telling me, well, I'll show you, some of the voids don't intersect anything, or don't cut anything. So it'll delete that element, and I don't want that, so I'm going to use cut, choose my void, and the solid again, and that's actually the sort of thing I was trying to create. And it's amazing, you see people do all sorts of complicated things to try and make these sorts of forms, when really it's just a combination of 2D profiles. Yeah, well, two profiles, yeah, but that's the right idea, yeah. So a blend, which is two profiles, and one extrusion, which is the void from the side. And so the void is really the more interesting thing, because it's made not from the ground plane, but from this reference plane that I've made to one side here at an angle. So I'm going to finish that model and do another one just to show you how I did that, and that's really the thing I wanted to emphasise. So maybe I want something coming over here that's again going alongside this stair I've made. So I'll do yet another reference plane. You'll see I've done a lot of this in the previous video, but I'll show you again. I've just found it helps to do the reference planes outside the family. You can make them within the family, but then they're harder to access when you go to do other things. And there's another trick I want to show you. So with reference plane, I'll draw something at the same angle as the side of the stair there, which is really what I'm trying to pick up. stretch it out so that it's easier to see on its own. And here's the real trick. You might remember this from the very beginning in CAD 1. I did show everyone this, but you've probably forgotten. Select it, and in properties you can give it a name. So yeah. So I'm going to call it stair angle, should do. And you'll see when you select that reference plane, the name will come up in the view. And then here's the other trick that not many people know. You can draw a section then following that angle. So snapping, you'll see we'll trace that reference plane. Now if you don't do it in the right order, if you try and do the section first and then get the reference plane to line up with that angle, it's very difficult. You won't snap to the section, but you will be able to snap the other way from the reference plane to the section. Now I'm just using the arrows on the keyboard to nudge that section away from the reference plane. So that way I'm looking at anything that I draw on the reference plane instead of looking through it. It's a really important concept. It's much easier to draw parallel to or perpendicular to the plane, looking straight at the profile instead of drawing at a funny angle to it. And that's the main trick I want to show you. Now it's very easy to go into model in place, and I'll set walls as my category. Okay, and I'm not going to do anything too complicated. Firstly though, I'm going to go into the section view by double clicking on the arrowhead. Straight away we know it's working because I can see these stairs dead on from the side. And then with extrusion, it'll still ask me to choose a plane. It's not clever enough to know, so I need to go and choose the stair angle plane that I've made, and that's really why you need to give it a name, so that you can choose it from this list. Okay, and then drawing lines. Just going to do some sort of, again, angled thing. Chopsticks, whatever you want to call them. Guys with PhDs, I've seen them running around talking for hours about chopsticks and things like this. PhDs in architecture, I mean. Okay, so I'm just using split there to break those lines in half, which makes it possible to then trim them. I've got my shape that I want. Finish in 3D. If you check that, the depth is maybe a bit much, so it's also right up against the stairs. I don't necessarily want that. I'm going to move those stairs later anyway because they're going into a column, but the angle will stay the same. So I'm going to move this over. You can always stretch the depth easily. Okay, so that's the main concept. I'll finish that model, and then while I'm at it, as I said, I'll move the stairs over. And maybe it is a good chance to, we've got a bit of time. So nudging this or just dragging it into a clear space. So it's got room. Oops, don't want to get into the column again. Should just make it, I think. There we go. Fantastic. And this family might be tempting to then start dragging that around as well. Avoid that if you can, because remember, it was defined by that original plane. So once I move it away from the plane, the relationship to the plane is changed, and if you go back to edit it, well, it's confusing for you. It's going to be even more confusing for Revit. It will get thrown out by that. So if you move it, try and move it with the plane, and I'm going to move it with the section view as well. So I've used Control to select those things, all three, and now I can move them as a group back to near the stair, which is where I want them. So notice it moves in a funny way. It doesn't want to move the object here, I'll just do that again so you can see. I've got constrain turned off, if you know about using that. That's not the problem. So here, if I try going left and right, the section and the reference plane are moving. Show you again. Okay, so I go back up and to the left. But notice this object isn't because it's constrained to that plane. I'll select it instead, edit in place, look in the section, and I can move it here. Not a problem, because it's moving along that plane. Okay, so back in the section view, go the other way. Okay, so it's fine. Notice it's a bit hard to tell now what's happening because of the view. It's not the object, but the section view is not showing the stairs. So I'll just drag that away. And back in the section now, we can see the stairs and see the relationship between those two things. That's starting to work. And then finally, because I didn't show you this, it's in the previous video I did on stairs, but very quickly, of course, to have the stairs visible on the upper level, I'm going to edit that boundary and cut a hole. In the floor, which I'm just doing by picking lines from the stair and the railing. And when you do that, you'll often be asked again if you want to attach things to the floor. What do you reckon you'd say here most of the time? No. That's right, no. This is one of the few things where you say no in Revit most of the time. I don't know if the developers would recommend this, but this is definitely what I would do because I've attached the things I want attached. I don't want it to go attaching things for me at this point, so no. If you're asked to join geometry, say yes. You always want things to be joined, but usually you don't want it to attach things for you. So again, notice this object here, parallel to the plane. I can still stretch that and work backwards and forwards, but left and right, it's better to do that within the family. So finally, into the 3D view. Oops. So it's getting there, but I've got this ceiling coming through my stair as well, and you need to think about that in the same way you do your floor. So just like the floor, I'd have to select it, edit boundary, back in the plan, any plan, and take away the parts where the stair goes through it. Anything else you can see that's obviously wrong with that stair? Thinking about Australian standards and conventions? Exactly. Don't have a down arrow. Never show down arrows in anywhere except America. Oh, I'll show you, there's an option. So they know, most countries they don't use down arrows. It's just America. So I'll show you. So I'm just going to finish that ceiling, and then when you select any stair, you've got this option here, which is a great thing in Revit, show up arrow in all views. Tick that, and most of the time you don't even want the labels. So you can turn the label off, and it will just have the arrow. But with the label on, it'll at least always have up when there is a label. Again, I don't want the label. So back into 3D finally, and the stair's clear. I'll nudge this over. So again, nudging left and right, not a problem. Now, and that's it. So again, just to hopefully give you a bit more confidence using different planes. Think about how you use your reference planes. And again, you can see it's great at them in 3D, but you can always create those in a plan view. Or going further, you might have thought about things that are at an angle projected at an angle from the ground plane. So I won't show you a solid made that way, but this is about the most complicated thing you can do with a solid in Revit if you want to try things like this. Say if I wanted to make things off the side of this now. you can draw a plane, a reference plane, in a side view, in a section. Right, and I can give that a name, just like I did before. Yeah. And that will be, so that, remember, this view is already at an angle. That's not a perpendicular view. So that's twisted already, and then I've twisted again. I could even do a plane from here at a different angle. And so you can get some pretty complicated things that way. But I won't demonstrate that. It's probably going a bit too far. It might give you some ideas. Anyhow, I'll just finish that on the 3D view there. That might give you some more ideas.